understand how wildfires are affecting us in Orange County. And when we think about the four main ones, organizations like CAL FIRE, the Forest Service, Orange County Fire Authority, uh, they had started maybe, for example, CAL FIRE started around 1885, and their focus was just fire prevention and suppression. Since working with the fire services, their main goal was to preserve all forest areas and land. So, firefighting in meaning that firefighting was seen as only fire suppression. So all fire was bad. And it's thanks to all of these different organizations, we're able to see it in a different way. So jumping back to really previous years and kind of realizing that large emphasis on conservation and preventing wildfires. So I like to share this quote because it really gives us an idea of how wildfires were perceived. So, Rod Richard, one of the U.S. Forest Service, described that light burning in the Journal of Forestry in 1912 as the most undesirable and the most mischievous. It was not forest protection, it was forest devastation, pure and simple. So that is just a great, kind of snapshot of how we all thought of wildfires, which was it's all bad. We got to stop all fires that happen. And what ended up happening was it created a major issue for firefighters in the future due to creating that abundance of fuels in our forests, our shrublands, which contributed to this major change in our natural landscape. So I like to share this just to give an idea of where, we've have our natural tree covers, where we've developed and how it's changed from 1985 to 2021. So we've realized that the decades from vegetation suppression made our landscape highly flammable. So we were able to understand and kind of realize that fire is not all bad or not all good. A healthy balance is needed. And what we realized was that wildfires occur naturally every 75 to 100 years. However, due to many factors, we're seeing major wildfires happen every 6 to 10 years. So a huge jump in terms of how fast and quickly wildfires are happening. And from this chart right here from CAL FIRE, you can see that we're not only are we experiencing more hot and intense wildfires, the devastation and the how many acreage is increasing. So that is due to mostly those urban development spaces that are prone to wildfires. It's a lot of things that we're working on with partners is discovering where are the key elements and points that we can target as a community to prevent these accidental ignitions near open spaces, near communities, so that way we can just have that better wildfire prevention. And what's good is I will chat a little bit more about that in the next couple slides. But we also like to look at some of the environmental threats that are contributing to these wildfires. So the more fire frequencies we have, habitat degradation, invasive species are all part of why wildfires are becoming more frequent and more destructive. And of course, if we think about the human caused fires, there are things like campfires, arson. I believe with OCFA investigating the Palisades and Palisades fire specifically, they're allegedly due to fireworks that were not fully what's it called extinguished. So there was some extra, there was a smoldering fire. So there wasn't an active flame, but there was still heat and an active flame happening. So it's a potential that fireworks was the cause of the Palisades fire. I don't have the official data because it takes a very long time for them to actually make the official quote, but wanted to mention that. So now that we know that wildfires are natural, I want to take a moment to take a step back and examine the impact of the wildfires on our landscape. So this is a image, I love to share it, but it's from the California Chaparral Institute. It's a site on the Alpine, California, off the Interstate 8 in San Diego County. The far left shows a mature chaparral stand that burned during the 1970 Laguna fire. So each year that you can see on top of the perspective landscape is how many times it's been burned through throughout the year. So as you can tell, the more wildfires that the land is going through, the harder it is for our natural landscape to replenish those native species that can help us become more prone to that are able to adapt to wildfires. So we want to make sure we're keeping our wildfires less as possible and keeping our lands with all the native um, plants. So, what we like to mention and what's really important for everyone to understand is that wildfires are different in California. I think it's interesting how we are very keen on earthquake safety in schools, but we don't talk a lot about wildfire safety, and that can be very prevalent, especially now. So, while, wildfires are tricky to navigate, all of our combined efforts are really making us notice the blind spot about wildfires in Southern California and that we have a special type of wildfire. When people think about California, a lot of the times what comes to mind is those large forested areas. I think I Googled California and the first image I saw was this one posted right here. So I always love to show that. And then Southern California, as you can see, this is one actually taking place at one of our fire watch locations. So huge difference. We don't have that large forested areas, which means our fires are not fueled by fuel. They are actually wind-driven fires. And we can see a lot of that being evident in how our fires are moving, how large they're able to become. And I like to share this data as well because this was, as I was doing my training and revamping it, the page was called the four most recent major fires, and this was the four that I had listed on there. So I had to, kind of update that, but I thought I'd share that we have information even about the freeway complex fire, the images I've seen of people, working on their own homes and trying to save like their homes was very impactful for me, and I'm, very blessed to be in this place where I can kind of help guide the community in ways to be more proactive in these kind of situations. So very happy to be part of here. Again, I like to emphasize that humans have a very high cause of these wildfires, and we like to remind our volunteers that no matter if it's intentional or accidental, human caused wildfires will only continue to increase without our intervention, which is why we have our Fire Watch volunteers acting as those visual deterrents and community educators for our members when it is those tragic weather, high alert weather conditions. So, as part of our Firewatch deployments, we're starting to actually see a trend when it comes to those red flag warnings. And when we talk about red flag warnings, these are weather alerts we get from the National Weather Service. I'm sure you are aware. You might have seen them. You get them as all the time. And what we've seen was that for November 19, 2022 was when we had one of our first red flag warning deployments. And we were pretty quiet after that. For the next 2 years, California experienced that above average precipitation, which also meant the increased vegetation growth. So that is when I jumped on in 2024. And by November 6th was when we had our first red flag warning conditions for a while. Luckily, it was only for 2 days and it was around that airport fire. Unfortunately, we don't deploy when there is an active fire because we want, safety of our volunteers is number one priority. And after that fire that had happened, what we're seeing is when a wildfire is active, the likelihood of another wildfire happening, it gets increased and it just exponentially goes from there. So As you can see, we had another deployment in December, which followed up with a 15 or 13 long deployment in January 7th. And that one was actually extended multiple times before it was actually safe and less likely that a wildfire will happen. But it was very intense. So for my historic data, I thought it'd be best for me to include the most recent major wildfires that I've seen and that I've been witnessing, which was one, the airport fire. Cause of that was due to public works. Unfortunately, there was a smoldering fire caused by the OC Public Works equipment. Again, we're seeing the human-caused fires during these red flag warning days when the temperatures are high, the Santa Ana winds are blowing, the fuel moisture is really low. So we're trying to make sure this kind of verbiage and language is well known in our community so that way we can see that wind-driven fires are the main cause of our major wildfires in Southern California. We are very special. So this brings us to before I talk about the volunteer side of the wildfire prevention efforts, I thought I'd share a really larger picture in how our organizations are working together in order to talk about wildfires and work on them together. Again, we are really small compared to the rest of California. So when we are trying to get funding for wildfire prevention in Southern California, a lot of the times we aren't able to due to the laws around surrounding wildfires. If it Wildfire prevention efforts are not focused on any fuel prevention efforts, a lot of the times funding will not be granted to any um, efforts that are focused on wind-driven fires just due to the lack of funding and the lack of research. So thankfully, the Department of Conservation has been able to grant Irvine Ranch Conservancy as kind of the uh, how do you say it? Like a kind of the discussion leader, I guess is the best way to put it, kind of the one to manage all of that and get us going so that we can get all on the same page of what wildfire prevention efforts need to look like. It's just very exciting. We also have the Orange County RFFC program, which is to increase that partner coordination to address the regional needs and priorities. So what's really awesome is that we do have projects right now that are being currently funded. For example, the 133 has a roadside hardening project that is happening where they are starting to plant more cactus along the freeways. So that way they are the more hardier plant. When, sparks, ignitions are happening, they have that nice barrier, and cactuses are known to just melt instead of having that ember cast that we also see with the wildfires. So what's great is this program is giving us kind of that research, that education in order to move, our kind of needs to the higher levels within funding. So that way, we're able to tackle wildfire prevention efforts effectively in Southern California. So this is a very high level overview of um, all of that. That is pretty much what my supervisor works on. I would love to get her connected with you if you're interested in kind of learning about the different projects. I know that we were working with Anaheim, for example. There was a eucalyptus trees that they needed to get cut down, but we're having a very difficult time getting, people there. And due to our partnership with OCFA, for example, we can get some they have like practice with their hand crews to like they need to practice chopping down like trees. So it is a very good resource in terms of if there are some invasive plants that need to get done, there is a way for us to get some firefighters who need training and build that collaboration together. So again, that is more my supervisor side, but I am the Firewatch program coordinator. So this is where I will share my passion and everything when it comes to getting with volunteers and working community level on what we can do to prevent wildfires. So when we talk about the Orange County Fire Watch program, our main goal is to reduce ignitions in high-risk areas of Orange County. So although we are part of the Irvine Ranch Conservancy, we work with many partners in order to make this program happen. And a lot of our primary roles for Firewatch volunteers are number one, to act as visual deterrents. You may have seen some of our volunteers out in Carbon Canyon with those bright neon vests, and they are, if you see them, that is perfect. That means they're doing their job correctly. The reason why we have that is a lot of the times when see someone in that bright orange vest, you are not going to want to do anything suspicious. So that is one of our first acts of intervening when it comes to preventing ignitions. A lot of the times, there are suspicious behaviors and activities that may happen, and we want to make sure that if it can potentially cause a wildfire, we let the right people know right away versus putting that through 911 and getting kind of bogged down in priorities. We know how to get through to the right people to get that situation covered. Number three, since we are out there, people come to us and ask, "Hey, what are you guys doing? Why is there a red flag warning?" And this is one thing that I know AI can never replace, is that human touch and that education with the public about fire awareness and prevention. So that is something that I am very active in advocating for our volunteers, because we are that personal touch when it comes to wildfire awareness and prevention. And lastly, we assist with early detection and reporting of ignitions. I believe on Carbon Canyon Road, one of my volunteers shared that there was a bunch of car parts that was just left on the side of the road, and that obviously is a fire hazard. So I went ahead, called the people that we knew, did a report, and was able to kind of get uh, pictures and everything sent to the Caltrans, I believe was the jurisdiction. So being able to work with them and, having volunteers that are very passionate about wildfire prevention is what makes this job very easy. So really quick, this is just another overview of all of our Firewatch locations. As mentioned, we do have locations in throughout Orange County, including Yorba Linda. So our locations there are at the Carbon Canyon Regional Park, as well as the Yorba Regional Park and the Featherly RV Park. So we are always needing volunteers in these areas. And if there is enough interest, I am more than happy to do a special Firewatch volunteer training session for that area. So that way we can get some people who maybe aren't able to travel all the way to Irvine to do this training. We can kind of meet them in their neighborhood and hopefully get some more people more just aware of what they can do during these times. So this is the final part of my presentation, but it's going to be very interesting. It's actually going through some of the deployment things that we saw in 2025 as well as 2026. So after the airport fire as well as the bonfire, the environmental conditions meant that our landscape was highly flammable. And unfortunately, there were a lot of things that were happening at the time. Resources were very limited, but fortunately, we had our Firewatch people deployed. These are some of them actually out and active. They sent me their photos while they were out there. And on the top right corner, they actually did start seeing some smoke. And turned out that it was um, dust and ash that was being blown from the bonfire in San Diego. So it was something that we were learning a lot during the time, especially because we haven't had a deployment for 2 years. People were rusty, but we were able to get pretty much 88 volunteers coming out. We had 175 shifts covered throughout all of those locations that you saw. And in general, we had about 516 hours completed. So another month later, another red flag warning was issued by the National Weather Service, and we were deployed for another 2 days. Luckily, there were no major fires, but we did see those Santa Ana winds going up to 84 miles an hour. And through our virtual fire watch tower volunteers, we did see some building fires that were going on, and were able to report that as they were happening as well. Again, we had all of our places activated, and while it was a little bit trickier during the holidays, we were still able to get 99 shifts covered. But it just goes to show that although we have 300 volunteers trained as fire watch right now, we still, during the um, red flag warnings, need as many people as possible that can help. Because a lot of the times, due to scheduling, due to maybe people traveling, we don't always get coverage for all of our locations. So, third deployment. After those first two in 2026, we had a experienced one of the driest Januaries in recorded history. And as you can see, I actually have the photo in here on the bottom right hand. There, that was the photo on Carbon Canyon Road of one of our volunteers mentioning, "Hey, someone just like dumped all this stuff over here. I think it's not safe." So we were able to get that reported and hopefully taken care of. During this time, we had 13 days of deployment. We had 157 volunteers. And during this time, unfortunately, that was when LA and SD had those large, significant wildfires. And I would say that Orange County was very fortunate to have no major wildfires happening around us. And I like to think that it's because of our coverage, our connection to the community, that we were able to spot and prevent any wildfires happening during that time. So I was very proud of us. We were very booked and busy, but one thing that we were very fortunate on was having our ham radio volunteers. This is one of our people, Greg, at the Black Star Gate, that is notorious for not having any signal. And we were very fortunate to have volunteers help us, especially at the Augustine Gate. So this was a very special event that happened. I was actually out trying to get some pictures and water to our volunteers. And I got a message from my supervisor saying that there was someone with a flat tire at the Augustine Gate. So I went ahead, took a quick picture, thinking it was going to be, great for, a reference for our firework handbook. And while this was happening, a car that was driving on the rim of their tire, shooting sparks everywhere, had a man pull over and say, "Hey, I do not have any cell service right now. Can you ask for help?" So I was there, and what was happening, you can kind of see me in the back corner right here, was at the time, since there was no cell service, we did have our ham volunteer um, be able to make a call into our operations center and let them know, "Hey, there's this man here with a flat tire." And what we found out was he was acting very suspicious, and turns out that he was intoxicated and was slurring his words. Our volunteers actually said he was throwing up before the park rangers came. And we were fortunate because we were able to ping our OC Parks Rangers right away when this happened, and they got there right on time because this man who was trying to change his tire was also trying to leave. And we were letting them know, "Hey, don't worry, we have people coming to help you, and we're gonna what's it called, get you situated." So at this point, our rangers were able to kind of handle the situation and escalate it to the CHP, and we were able to get this man in the right hands, because at this point, what we realized was our volunteers, were able to make that report to the right people, elevate it. And when the officers came, they did a background check. It turns out this man was convicted of a DUI years ago. And when they were searching his car, they had found a giant buzz ball right there. So at this time, all of our rangers and volunteers were telling us we probably prevented this man from causing a huge, large wildfire at along Santiago Canyon Road. It was, Santa Ana winds, dry conditions. He was driving on the rim of his tire, as you can see here, and driving very recklessly. So this was one of those moments where I was like, "Oh my God, I need to get my ham radio license." And thankfully, we have a very great dedicated ham volunteers that do set up study sessions for us, so that way we can get certified. It's a whole day of kind of asking questions and then taking the test. But we are very thankful that our Fire Watch group is very motivated and want to be just advocates for our land. And that is where I will conclude my presentation. We would love to do more chats if you're more interested in talking and learning about more of those wildfire prevention efforts in terms of the regional forest service capacity. And if you want to know more about Firewatch, maybe even having a Firewatch presentation close to you guys, I would love to set that up. And um, I have a QR code just to easily get you guys to our website if you have any questions. But with that being said, I hope that gives you guys a good overview of Firewatch, wildfire prevention efforts happening in Southern California. And this is just a picture of our team, my supervisor, Maddie, and my other coworker, Jen. They are also really great resources in terms of building partnerships within Southern California, especially with our native tribes. So we are looking forward to building this partnership. We're very proud of you guys for getting your Fire Safe Council started in Yorba Linda, getting your, 501(c)(3) and everything is a process, but you guys are getting there, and we're just thankful to be invited to chat with you guys. So I'm sure this is more to come for the future. And I am more than happy to answer any questions. If you want to send an email to me, that would be great. And I believe I had also shared the presentations um, as well, so that can be shared after after this is all done. So thank you again for having me, and I'm, looking forward to um, our future conversations and presentations.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. It was really interesting. I know I have a couple questions, but we'll see if anyone else has any. Feel free to raise your hand. Bob, I see you have a question in the chat that says, when a volunteer spots a possible fire, what actions do they take? And then do they call 911?
Yes. So in the training, we have those scenarios that are 911 right away. And one of them is if there's a potential fire. So even if they see smoke, they call 911 right away. So that is how we like to remind our volunteers is that they are the first person that can see and give the best accurate information. So we want them to get that reported right away. And then from there, reach out to our operations center and we can kind of do our back end reports. But yeah, we've had to do a couple of those 911 calls a couple of times, but I think our volunteers are pretty used to it now.
Yep. Well, I would support you getting your ham radio license. I've come this close before. I almost did it as a CERT member in the city of Brea, but
Oh,
uh,
yes.
it's a good skill to have. So,
I have it on my to-do list. I know that we had a session happen just a couple weeks ago, but I was unable to do it. And I know the question pool is changing.
oh,
So that is where I told myself I will wait till the new questions come so that way I can retake it more times and not feel like I need to make or break this one chance. So it is
right.
definitely on my to-dos.
Awesome. Anyone else have any questions that they want to ask? Looks like we. All right, so
Yes,
Mary's got, yeah, you've got the time. I'm just going to read it for the recording.
no problem.
What kind of time commitment is involved in volunteering, and then do volunteers walk a specific path?
So for time commitment for volunteering, we are in partnership with Irvine Ranch Conservancy and OC Parks. So in order to get started within the Firewatch program, you do become a volunteer within one of those nonprofits, and that usually is because we want you to be familiar with the land, familiar with CPR training, things like that, and just giving you that kind of community engagement training as well is very important to us. So, we have those different training pathways. One of them happens more frequently than the other, so kind of depending on your time commitment. But a lot of the times, the commitment is pretty minimal when it comes to Firewatch. A lot of the times, because we do not get a red flag warning all the time, we don't always deploy, but I have been very active with my volunteers in terms of doing quarterly meetings, doing little meet and greets, fire watch trivia nights, as well as a wildfire prevention symposium. Just because, there's no red flag warnings doesn't mean we can't continue having the conversation about wildfires. And in terms of the volunteers, when they are in station, we do want them to stay stationary in their location. Since it is kind of determined by the best vantage point. What is good though is we can assign two volunteers at one spot. So that way they can alternate in terms of if maybe someone does need to go check on a hiker. We did get someone at Black Star Gate letting us know there was someone that was passed out. Can we get someone's help? And we were able to kind of tag team with our volunteers to get some support there. Because they are also first aid trained and CPR trained, that was a very useful time for us to have all of that ready to go. So, yeah. And if you are interested in a like special training, that is something that we can do where it's a kind of combined training where it's expedited. So you can become a volunteer with OC Parks and then do a fire watch training all in one day. It is a very long and intense process. It's a full day, but if there is enough interest, then we can make it happen. But other than that, there are still the traditional ways of getting involved, which is starting with the Irvine Ranch Conservancy or OC Parks. Sending them an interest form is going to get you right in the door in the right place to get started. And yeah, that's hope that answers the questions.
That was good. I'll tack on a question to that. Um, so let's just say that we have a suite of volunteers from Yorba Linda that would like to become Fire Watch volunteers, and they go through a training. How are locations selected? So like,
Yes.
what categories are you looking at? Are you going to send somebody from Yorba Linda down to Rancho Santa Margarita? Like some of those basics.
Yeah, so volunteers definitely it's they choose your own adventure kind of path.
Mhm.
We don't have any like assignments. A lot of times volunteers have their favorite spots that they will sign up for, but then sometimes more than one person really likes volunteering at that spot. So we do encourage volunteers to try out different locations, but what we have seen is that Yorba Linda and our northern Orange County locations have been needing some more support. So we are more than happy to get volunteers through that expedited training in within that neighborhood. And then one thing that we would love to do is definitely open more fire watch locations, but with that, it does take, finances and things like that. I have been in talks with um, our kind of director trying to see what does a budget look like if we were to open more locations, what kind of funding from the city would we need? What kind of backing from the community would we need in order to establish, hey, we actually identified four more locations within Yorba Linda that need coverage. So we are definitely open to building that partnership. It's just, again, building that, research and data before we can get that going. And we do have some contacts from like the city council in Yorba Linda. So hopefully we can, kind of ping them and show them, hey, this is the high demand that we need. And yeah, I'm hopefully with this partnership, we can also work together and get something started there because you guys probably would know best in terms of where we need coverage. And that would be a wonderful, what's it called, just asset for us if we are trying to get more locations up there. So I'm definitely open to having that conversation.
Awesome. I think that's a great thing to pay attention to as we, build the organization up. My last question is about the training that folks go through. So some of the
Mhm.
things that you covered were, to use the scientific word, type conversion, where the habitat is changing.
Yes.
What are they learning about? Is it, I'll just say lovingly, but not. It reminds me of that Finding Nemo moment where the shark's like, fish are friends, not food. Like habitat is friendly, not
Yeah.
and fires start. Because if you look at the science, right, houses burn houses down more frequently than wildlands burn houses down. And so, what are they taught, if anything, about wildland fires?
Yes. So we fortunately, for the Firewatch training, it is actually 4 hours long because we go through all of the details in terms of wildfire behavior, history of wildfire. And one of our volunteers is actually a retired firefighter. So
Oh,
he
nice.
goes ahead and talks about the different fire behavior. So we do go into detail about like identifying what is a fire versus maybe ash from a previous fire, and then even talking about what different fires look like and how ember casts are made. So we go through a lot of d more details in our trainings. But I love to just kind of, I think the information I provide is a good gate, like dip your toe into what wildfire prevention looks like and what we're doing as just, a small organization here. But yes, along with wildfire prevention, the next section that we do is also the reporting and learning about the locations, how we choose the locations, how to activate, how to sign up. So we do our best to make sure that volunteers feel ready to go out there. We even have different deployments where it's a mock deployment, and we can do one where if you're not fully comfortable, we assign you with an experienced volunteer, so that way you can kind of tag team together and get the ropes, get yeah, learning the
Learn the
ropes. Oh my
ropes.
gosh.
Yeah.
Yes, there you go. And then usually once they do a one shadow session, they're like, okay, I got this. I'm totally comfortable, know how to talk about the Firewatch program, know how to educate on why wind-driven fires are why the biggest issues for Southern California and things like that.
Nice. Excellent. Well, I thank you again. I'll pause and see if anyone else, I don't see anyone raising their hand or unmuting. So what a time to be doing this. I just want to commend you for the hard work that the Conservancy is doing. You're at the forefront of a lot of things, whether it's habitat restoration or wildfire um, prevention, I'll say, because this is at that leading edge. So we appreciate all that you're doing. And I'll just acknowledge that our next meeting, Laura Blau, I think is how you say her last name, is from the California Fire Safe Council. So that was the mothership that I was talking about, who's presenting on July 2nd, just in time for the 4th of July, which, based on the wildfire studies I've done for Chino Hills State Park, most of our fires start in the days before and after the 4th of July. And so while you may not officially be on fire watch, I would encourage you to keep your eyes peeled and report anything that you see. And even if it goes to the point of making sure that your neighbors are aware that even safe and sane fireworks are not allowed in the city of Yorba Linda. No fireworks are allowed. So keep our communities safe means we need to make sure that some of those rules are being effectively educated in the community and enforced in the community. So I will wish everyone a great month. Happy Father's Day to those that are fathers, and we will see everyone in 4 weeks. And have a great time, Bob, and in Yosemite. Say hi to Diane for us. You will. All right. Fantastic. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Thanks,
Bye bye.
everyone. Bye.